Deep in Washington's Cascade Mountains, deputies made a discovery that would haunt a nation. 3 little girls ages 5, 8, and 9 found bound with zip ties, plastic bags suffocating their final breaths. Their names were Olivia, Evelyn, and Paityn. But here's what made this case truly terrifying. The killer wasn't some random predator stalking children in the wilderness. It was their own father, a decorated Army veteran who vanished into the mountains that same night, armed with military training and a survivor's instinct. Tonight, we unravel the chilling transformation of Travis Decker from hero to monster and why this case has left an entire state sleeping with their doors locked. What kind of father looks into his daughter's eyes and decides they must die? But before we dive into this incredible real case, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if stories like this keep you up at night, make sure to hit that subscribe button to know upcoming true crime story. So, let's begin. Let me paint you a picture. It's May 30th, 2025, 5 p.m. in Wenatchee, Washington. A white GMC Sierra pulls up to a modest home. 3 girls, Paityn, 9, Evelyn, 8, and little Olivia, 5, rush out excitedly. Dad's here for their weekend visit. Their father, Travis Decker, helps them into the truck. To neighbors watching, it looked like any other divorced dad picking up his kids. What they couldn't see was the storm brewing behind Travis's eyes. What they didn't know was that these 3 beautiful children would never come home alive. But how do we get from this seemingly normal moment to 3 bodies in the woods? The answer lies in understanding who Travis Decker really was and what war did to him. Born August 15, 1992 in Wisconsin, Travis grew up in what seemed like the American dream. Football hero, wrestling champion, son of a Green Beret. His high school peers remember a natural leader with quiet charisma, someone who commanded respect without saying a word. At 20, Travis enlisted in the Army as an 1B infantryman. This wasn't some kid running away from problems. This was a young man following his father's footsteps into service. He excelled at Fort Benning, earning his expert infantry badge and parachutist wings distinctions reserved for the military's elite. Then came Afghanistan. In 2014, Travis deployed for 4 months to a country where roadside bombs and sniper fire were daily realities. His unit operated in hostile zones where split-second decisions meant life or death. Every convoy could be your last. Every night brought the possibility of mortar attacks. What happened over there? Travis never talked about it. Not to his wife, not to his family, not to the therapists who would later try to reach him. But those who served alongside him noticed the change immediately. He came back different, one squadmate would later tell investigators. Quiet, distant. Like part of him never left the desert. After Afghanistan, the Army stationed Travis in Italy with the 173rd Airborne Brigade, an elite unit with impossibly high standards. On paper, he thrived. Reality was more complicated. Fellow soldiers described a man pushing himself to dangerous extremes, driven by something he couldn't name or control. Meanwhile, back in Wisconsin, Whitney was waiting. They'd been high school sweethearts, the classic American love story of football games and prom dates growing into something deeper. Wedding photos show to young people absolutely convinced they'd found forever. But here's what no one tells you about military marriages. Deployment doesn't just take the soldier away. It brings back someone you don't always recognize. In 2015, their first daughter Paityn arrived. Wild curls, bright eyes, boundless curiosity. A year later came Evelyn, gentle, thoughtful, the family peacemaker. And in 2020, little Olivia completed their trio. Social media painted the perfect picture. Birthday parties, hiking adventures, dance recitals. The Decker family had everything except stability. Travis attended Non-Commissioned Officer Academy at Fort Benning in 2018, earning more credentials and commendations. But success couldn't fill the growing void inside him. Friends described a man at war with himself, disciplined on the outside, crumbling within. By 2019, Travis had transferred to the Washington National Guard, chasing dreams of becoming an Army Ranger. But here's where the first major crack appeared. Despite what some photos suggested, Travis never completed Ranger school. That coveted tab, the one thing he'd wanted most, remained forever out of reach. For a man whose identity was built on achievement and military excellence, This failure ate at him like acid. Think about it. How would you handle your biggest dream slipping away? Most people find ways to cope, to redirect, to heal. Travis chose a different path, one that led him deeper into isolation and instability. His National Guard attendance became sporadic. Missed drills, absent without leave. The structure that had defined his entire adult life was crumbling, and Travis was falling with it. Whitney watched her husband disappearing before her eyes. The man who'd once been her high school hero was becoming someone she didn't recognize, someone she was beginning to fear. But the real horror hadn't even begun. Here's what you need to understand about PTSD and borderline personality disorder. They don't just affect the person diagnosed. They ripple out, touching everyone in their orbit. And Travis Decker's orbit was shrinking fast. After his military separation, Travis's living situation became increasingly unstable. From a National Guard armory to a cramped apartment, then to an RV that was eventually repossessed. Finally, he was living out of his GNCC era, camping in remote areas for weeks at a time. Whitney began documenting disturbing changes. In summer 2023, Travis showed up at her house unannounced, screaming for the girls. Neighbors called police. The incident left everyone shaken, especially the children. But here's the question that haunts this case. When do warning signs become predictions of tragedy? By December 2023, Travis would disappear for days without contact. When he did show up for visits, the girls would return home traumatized. Whitney described them as walking on eggshells around their father. Then came the incident that should have changed everything. August 15, 2024, Travis's birthday. One of his daughters was found unconscious at his mother's house with a bathrobe tied around her neck. Whitney wasn't even notified. Let that sink in for a moment. A 5-year-old child unconscious with something tied around her throat, and the mother isn't called. Would you have let your children go back after that? Whitney tried to stop it, but the legal system moved at its own pace, a pace that would prove fatally slow. Whitney's attorney later described Travis's lifestyle as fit for a homeless shelter, living in vehicles with children, camping in remote areas with 3 little girls who should have been sleeping safely in their beds. The man who'd once been trained to protect and serve had become someone his own family needed protection from. Still, Travis maintained parental rights. Court documents show Whitney's growing desperation as she filed petition after petition, trying to limit his access to their daughters. She requested supervised visitation only, no overnight stays, mandatory psychiatric evaluation, ongoing mental health treatment. The system responded with bureaucratic slowness. Hearings were scheduled, evaluations were ordered, restrictions were put in place, all reasonable steps taken at a reasonable pace. But evil doesn't wait for reasonable solutions. Travis fought these restrictions passionately, arguing that his daughters were never in danger. He deserved overnight visits. He was their father. The judge, working with limited information and legal constraints, imposed modified custody, alternating weekend visits with conditions designed to keep the children safe. On paper, it looked responsible. In reality, it was a death sentence. Here's what chills me about this case. Every single warning sign was documented. Police reports, court filings, witness statements. The system saw Travis Decker coming like a slow-motion car crash, and still couldn't prevent the collision. Spring 2025 brought new signs of escalation. Travis's daily calls to his daughters stopped. He withdrew from all routine communication. His internet searches told a terrifying story. Crossing into Canada, wilderness survival, remote mountain trails. Then came the car accidents. May 4th, Travis fled the scene of a collision. The other driver didn't press charges, but fleeing showed his mindset: run first. Face consequences never. May 24th, another rear-end crash resulting in traffic citations. 3 days before he would pick up his daughters for the last time. After this second crash, Travis called the girls. His voice was heavy, distant. "I think I'm going to jail," he told them. Then he showed up at Whitney's house unannounced and agitated. Was this a father trying to say goodbye? Or was he preparing his daughters for something darker? Whitney's gut screamed that something was catastrophically wrong. She'd followed every legal channel, documented every incident, fought for every protection. that the system that was supposed to safeguard her children was about to fail them in the most horrific way possible. And still, Travis retained visitation rights. Friday, May 30th, 2025, 5 p.m. The white GMC Sierra arrived as scheduled. What happened next would shatter 3 families and haunt a community forever. The girls climbed into their father's truck that Friday evening, chattering about weekend plans. Paityn brought her favorite book. Evelyn packed her art supplies. Little Olivia clutched her stuffed animal. They had no idea they were climbing into a hearse. Travis was supposed to return them by 8 p.m. a court-ordered restriction designed to prevent overnight stays. 8 p.m. came and went. Whitney's calls went straight to voicemail. By 9:45 p.m., she was at the police station filing a missing persons report. He didn't come back, she told officers, her voice trembling. "I've tried calling. He's not responding. Please, they're not home." Here's where the system failed again. Police attempted to issue an Amber Alert twice. Both requests were denied by Washington State Patrol. Not all criteria were met. No evidence of stranger abduction. No immediate proof of danger. Instead, they issued an endangered missing person alert. Far less urgent. Far fewer people notified. Think about that decision. 3 children with a father who'd been flagged for mental health issues, who'd fled accident scenes, who lived in his truck, who'd been the subject of multiple custody concerns and that didn't qualify for an Amber Alert. How many lives might have been saved by those extra hours of statewide notification? Saturday brought an expanded search. Law enforcement tracked Travis's truck heading westbound on Highway 2. Hundreds of tips flooded in, but none led to the family. By Sunday, search teams were mapping grid patterns across the Cascade Mountains. Then came Monday, June 2nd, 3 p.m., Rock Island Campground in Chelan County. Investigators found the white GMC Sierra in a remote pullout. Engine cold. Vehicle empty. Inside, bloodied handprints on the tailgate. Car seats. A tent. Coolers. Evidence of a recent camp. But the truck was just the beginning. About 100 yards down a steep embankment, search teams found them. Paityn, Evelyn and Olivia Decker, each child bound with zip ties, plastic bags over their heads, suffocated slowly while their father watched. The autopsy would confirm what everyone feared: asphyxiation. Deliberate? Calculated? A father's ultimate betrayal. Evidence suggested Travis had scouted this location beforehand. The truck had been driven to the campground the day before without the children aboard. This wasn't a crime of passion or mental breakdown. This was premeditation. But here is the detail that haunts investigators. The campground was just 11 miles from the Pacific Crest Trailer pathway leading straight to the Canadian border. Travis's internet searches suddenly made horrifying sense. He'd planned to kill his daughters, then disappear into the wilderness using skills learned in military service. A decorated soldier-turned-child killer, armed with survival training and 2.5 months of off-grid experience. The manhunt that followed would become one of the largest in Washington state history. That evening, Sheriff Mike Morrison held a press conference. His voice was steady, but his message was clear. Travis Decker is now wanted for the murders of his 3 daughters. Do not approach him. He is armed and extremely dangerous. The manhunt began immediately. U.S. Marshals, FBI, Washington Army National Guard, helicopters with thermal imaging, K-9 units tracking sent through mountain wilderness, a $20,000 reward for information leading to his capture. Hikers in the enchantments area reported sightings of a lone, ill-equipped man who fled when helicopters approached. Drone footage captured movement near Catchess Lake. K-9 teams followed trails that led out of search zones. But Travis Decker had vanished like smoke. On June 3rd, hundreds gathered for a candlelight vigil in Wenatchee. Strangers, teachers, friends, and entire community united in grief and horror. They sang "This Little Light of Mine" for 3 little girls whose lights had been extinguished by the person who should have protected them most. Whitney stood before the crowd, shattered but resolute. Through her attorney, she called the tragedy heartbreaking and preventable. The system had failed. Bureaucratic red tape had prevented Travis from getting timely VA treatment. Custody laws needed reform when mental illness was evident. But the most haunting words came from Travis's own brother, Thomas. "The guy on the wanted poster is not the brother I know," he said. Their relationship had ended months earlier after a family intervention. Thomas described Travis as violent, unpredictable, deep in mental health crisis. Even his own family had given up on him. Military friends echoed similar sentiments. The disciplined, reliable soldier they'd known had become someone they didn't recognize, strained, distant, volatile. The support system that once defined him had been replaced by silence and shadow. Today, more than for months after the murders, Travis Decker remains at large. Some speculate he took his own life in the wilderness, a final act of cowardice, to avoid facing justice. Even Whitney has expressed fears that he's dead, lost to suicide in the mountains. But law enforcement doesn't work on speculation. As long as there's no body, no definitive proof, Travis Decker is considered alive, armed, and dangerous. The Chelan County Sheriff's Office has released composite images showing different appearances he might adopt. Varying hairstyles, facial hair, had anything to blend in and hide in plain sight. His military tattoos and distinctive build remain identifying features. Authorities stress that this manhunt remains active despite the vast terrain and months without capture. "We are not closing this case until Travis is in custody or confirmed dead," Sheriff Morrison stated. "We will not stop. We will keep going." The search continues across hundreds of square miles of rugged Cascade wilderness. Every trail camera, every doorbell video, every hiker's suspicious encounter could be the break investigators need. Here is what haunts me about this case. We may never truly understand what transformed Travis Decker from protector to predator. Was it PTSD from Afghanistan? The borderline personality disorder diagnosis? The crushing disappointment of failing ranger school? The spiral into homelessness and isolation? Or was there something darker, something that existed long before military service, something that was simply awakened? Mental health advocates point to systemic failures, veterans struggling to get timely care, a healthcare system that moves too slowly for crisis intervention, custody courts that prioritize parental rights over child safety. But others argue that millions of veterans struggle with PTSD without harming children. Thousands of divorced fathers lose custody battles without murdering their families. Mental illness might explain erratic behavior, but can it excuse the calculated torture and murder of 3 innocent girls? The truth is probably more complex than any single explanation. Travis Decker represents a perfect storm of untreated trauma, personality disorders, systemic failures, and perhaps something fundamentally broken that no intervention could have fixed. As I finish researching this case, one image stays with me: 3 little girls climbing excitedly into their father's truck, trusting completely in the person who would destroy them. Paityn with her wild curls and curious spirit. Evelyn, gentle and thoughtful. Little Olivia, the family's baby. They believed in their daddy right up until the moment he bound their hands and stole their breath. That level of betrayal, that corruption of the most sacred trust, represents evil in its purest form. Tonight, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, Travis Decker might be reading these words. He could be hiding in remote wilderness, living off survival skills learned in military service. Or he might be walking among us in a grocery store, gas station, small-town diner, disguised but still dangerous. Residents across Washington state have changed their routines. Parents hold their children closer. Hikers travel in groups. An entire region remains on edge because one monster decided that his pain mattered more than his daughters' lives. The manhunt continues. Justice waits, and 3 little angels deserve better than a father who became their executioner. If you have any information about Travis Decker's whereabouts, contact the U.S. Marshal Service immediately. Do not approach him. He's already proven what he's capable of. Until he's found dead or alive, no parent sleeps easy knowing that somewhere out there, a child killer roams free. The monster is still in the mountains, and he's still hunting. What do you think happened to Travis Decker? Is he dead in the wilderness or hiding in plain sight? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into cases that shock the nation. Because sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones who once promised to protect us.